Where are you going?
We are made in that image. So we honor then that avatara, that descent from spirit, of those who are way showers, who have walked the path.
And I'm looking for a friend.
Welcome, everyone, and many of you welcome back from last night's Kriya ceremony. The reason why these flowers are so exuberant here today, we only do a Kriya initiation twice a year, July and November. So this is a very special weekend for many of us. A friend of mine, a Jewish friend of mine, he used to be here in Seattle and he moved to our community in California, Palo Alto, sent me some Jewish jokes. So I thought I'd share at least one of them with you. And so, this father, this man, went to the rabbi and he said, "Rabbi, what do I do? My son has left home to become a Christian." The rabbi looked down and then he looked at him and said, "You won't believe this, but my son left home to become a Christian too. We better pray." And so they bowed and they prayed silently. And then they heard this voice of God. "You won't believe this." You know, it's such a curious subject, the subject of the need for the role of the guru, because it's like so many other things that until you yourself perceive that need, it isn't a need. And we've often, different ones of us who give these talks have often quoted Swami Kriyananda, who often quoted himself, for the fact that one time he was badgered on a TV show by somebody who said, "Do I need a guru?" And Swami said, "I thought to myself, you sure don't." But anyway, he said, "No, you don't, unless you want self-realization." And so you know, very often when we speak on a subject like this or people write about it, we do so logically to be persuasive. But that's fine, just like the reading here today, but it doesn't really work that way. There's a chant that we never sing. Actually, there's several chants that we never sing, but not for any musical reason. It goes like this: "O devotee, I can give thee salvation, but not my love and devotion. For when I give those away, I give myself away." You see, in life, both outwardly and in terms of material success, sure, but here we're not talking about that. Spiritually speaking, we can make great progress through spiritual disciplines, through right action and right attitude. But we'll never get there just by that alone. There's something, it's not missing in our spiritual DNA so much, it just isn't strong enough. And the need for the guru, the need for someone who has achieved that which we are, that which we seek, is axiomatic in the world around us, in any case, in terms of learning anything worth learning. And so, nonetheless, it's like if you want to play the guitar like Bhima and Steve here and Kyle, you know, you can probably learn it yourself, right, Kyle? I mean, you know, but some things you can't. All right. How many people go to art school? Van Gogh probably didn't. Beethoven probably didn't go to music college. You see, to really be a success in something that has to do with the greatest art ever known, God realization, is sure, you can do it, but you need help. And so, you know, I was thinking about our culture here in the West. I think a lot about it, actually, because I was dyed in the wool and spent 16 years in Catholic education. most of which I don't remember much of. But I got whacked on the ear a couple of times by the nuns, because I was always mouthing off. But, and I know a few Latin words which have stuck with me, I came, I saw, I conquered, veni, veni, vici, the works of Julius Caesar and Virgil and so forth. But we've inherited a kind of a paradigm, if you will, that says that there's only one guru, Jesus Christ. I remember when I walked up to the altar, not this particular one, but at Ananda village when Swami Kriya was giving a Kriya initiation that I attended my first time, and I thought I had left that all behind, right? But as a good Catholic boy who once studied for the priesthood, I walked up to that altar for my blessing, and I gulped, okay? Because there's only one. It says in St. John chapter 1, he says, and in the beginning was the Word, right? Very famously. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And all things that were made by the Word, or something like that. And then, a few sentences down towards the end of the chapter, it converts into, without naming, Jesus Christ. Now, I don't know what it is those theologians missed, but the Word is not a person. It's not personal. Extremely impersonal, indeed, extremely abstract as far as I'm concerned. There's no reason why the Word could not incarnate into all sorts of forms, all sorts of humans. In fact, all humans, because to as many as received the Word, to them gave he the power to become the sons of God. So I don't know what they missed there, but maybe they'll go back and read it someday. Us, we Catholics never read the Bible, of course. We're told what to believe. So I'm hoping someday somebody up there in the Vatican will read the dang thing. But they'll get there eventually. But yet in the East, you see, in the East, this has been a great tradition for thousands of years, that God takes human form. I mean, step back from this for a moment. Quite apart from the deeper teaching that Tatvamasi, we are that too, but that's not what we experience, let's face it, with one another. We should try, but we don't, generally. But just imagine, I mean, have you ever meditated on the thought that through that door could come God? Would that change your life or what? Sure it would. But would you know him? When I was a kid on the playground, I don't know about some of you, but we would say, takes one to know one, right? Remember when we'd insult each other? They say that in Italian? No, of course not. But it's true. It takes one to know one. Until you can contemplate your own divinity, your own sanctity, your own goodness. That's where the whole field of loving thyself comes from. To me, it's a little off the wall, but that's what its deeper meaning is, that you can't love unless there's love within you, you see. And so how many, I think thousands actually, people went and heard Jesus Christ in that incredible Sermon on the Mount? What did they do afterwards? Look for a pub? In other words, there were only, 12? One of them was a schmuck, and then a few others. In other words, if he came through that door today, how many could see him? So of course it's difficult for us to see that Christ in ourselves. But we've been blessed by a teaching from the East that says exactly that. And the time has come for us to realize that, because we just can't continue this civilization with the kind of polarization that we have. I mean, it's bad enough in politics. You sort of expect that in politics. It wasn't any better when this country was first formed. In fact, you should have seen the things they said about Abraham Lincoln or even George Washington, and they still say about him. But in religion, you'd at least have a reasonable thought that people ought to be nice, at least. But it ain't so, because we're people, basically. We're trying to become something more. And so the need for a guru, I admit, has to come from within yourself. I've often said that until you try to achieve even quietness of mind and meditation, what to mention more advanced experiences of ecstasy, upliftment, superconsciousness, via breathlessness, all those things that the different mystics east and west talk about, levitation, etc. Far from that. Just try to meditate. I don't know why it is people who don't practice meditation realize I need help. I certainly do. And yet we carry on. Why? Because, you see, we're in the same conundrum. Well, we're in several conundrums. I don't know if that's possible to be in several conundrums, but I just made that up. For one thing, we've entered in a new age of consciousness. And speaking of politics, America sort of symbolizes for the world in its birth and for freedom, political freedom, and all the struggles we've had for racial equality and gender equality and social justice, all those things. Not that other nations haven't, of course, but we seem to be a leader in the field, if you will. And so we've entered an age where, as Swami Sri Yukteswar, where you go, where he actually predicted that we would enter an age at long last when individuals would feel a growing sense of self-respect. Okay? Because, I don't know if any of you have any past life experiences. I don't care and I don't want to hear them, but if you try to put yourself back into medieval times, whether in India, it doesn't matter, it's the same everywhere, and you think of how you were born was how you were going to live. What your father or your mother did is what you were going to do. And there was no social mobility, no wonder they talked about suffering all the time. It made sense. That's what they did all the time, is they suffered. I don't know about you, but I'm willing to try to accept what suffering comes, and believe me, we each have our share, but it doesn't give me a lot of inspiration anymore. Not all that excited about being nailed to a cross, although I have my share of that in other forms, but anyway. And so we've entered a new level of consciousness, of self-respect. And I call it an age of individuality, or if you want to be more cynical, which comes easily to me, an age of egotism. But duality is very clever, because along with this age of, what's in it for me, Charlotte, is the simple fact that our religion, which is really science, okay? Our religion, science tells us that we are not what we look like. We are not who we think we are. This world is something vastly interconnected. I remember when the ecology movement first started, that's how old I am, I couldn't believe it. I said to myself, this is really fun. It's going to be ecology that's going to spread the message of oneness, the message of inclusiveness, not religion, which, is pretty much in the dumps, at least in the West, everywhere really. China, let's face it. So there's a counterbalance to this uprising thing of meanness. And we see it in, for those who are into this subject, I know I have to be careful, in things like climate change. What we do affects other people. We see this in Rachel Carlson's landmark book that really set the stage for the movement of ecology. We're all connected. And so what does that do? What does that do to the me? It means I'm either very selfish, and there's plenty of that, or as I grow in refinement and education, maybe travel, awareness, etc., and especially if I meditate, I feel my connection with the earth, with other people. You see how the divine is so clever to... And so for those who are ready for this awareness comes the gift of meditation from the East. I quoted the famous historian last night at the Kriya ceremony, Arnold Toynbee, who predicted long ago that whereas the West brutally conquered the East with its weaponry and so on, technology of the time, the East will conquer the hearts and minds of the West. And in the book which I recommend to you, The American Veda by Philip Goldberg, he traces the importation of Vedanta, the metaphysics of Brahma, of oneness, into Western culture. It's an amazing book. It has a chapter on Yogananda's influence and so forth, but it largely started when the English translations of the Gita and other scriptures made it to America's shores via our friends in Britain, in the early 19th century, when Emerson and Thoreau and Walt Whitman and some of those great transcendentalists, they were actually called at that time, and then that later morphed later in the 19th century into the New Thought movement, Unity, Church of Religious Science, and so on and so forth. Right, Kevin? And so, this is remaking the face of the world. Swami Kriyananda talks about how in 1948, in September, early September, he stumbled on, was forced upon him by Divine Mother, the autobiography of a yogi. Before reading that book, he had never heard the word guru. 1948, post-war American New York City? You kidding? Karma, all these things that you and I have long taken for granted in this culture. My karma ran over your dogma, that kind of thing, right? And so this is a silent tsunami. But we can go a long way with ecology, sustainability, with, all these wonderful things that are, solar, this and that. And we could change the world today if we could agree on it. That's never going to happen. The golden rule, we don't need religion. We've got the golden rule. That's not going to work. That's just mere logic. Do you see what I mean? What I'm trying to say is reason and logic and all the things that we do that are beneficial for ourselves, for our own health, and for the world around us, amount to nothing. It's just more stuff. I always laugh when we move and I see other people move in and out of our apartment community. Big trucks come in and we got so much stuff. It's a material universe. It's not hard to get a lot of material. Getting rid of it's the hard part. And so these are all wonderful things that we should do, but they avail us nothing. Not really. God watches the heart. And we can have it all. We could make this planet a paradise. Nothing stopping us. We have all the tools, all the knowledge. It ain't going to happen. So what choice do you have? Do good, okay, fine, don't be a schmuck, but do something good in this world. Leave it better than you found it, all right. It's what's going on in here, because the world itself isn't what it seems to be. It's only a school. We can improve the school a little bit, but we're here to graduate. And I'm not saying we should look at the world as delusive, though it is delusive from the spiritual standpoint, but it's not evil. In fact, it's beautiful. It's good. When you live in God consciousness, the world is beautiful. But without it, it can become a nightmare. If nothing else, illness, a disease, old age, and death is for sure yours, every bit as much as taxes. And so we are here today in this space talking about that power, that divine power that incarnates into human form. But what we have so much trouble, not only recognize, even if we recognize, I mean, thousands heard Yogananda. He was the most sought after public speaker in the 30s. One time he was standing on a stage with 5,000 people somewhere, and his friend congratulated him on the attendance, as naturally you do. Yogananda turned to the fellow and said, "Yes, but maybe 3, maybe 5 people will take up the spiritual path in earnest." You know, Swami Kriyananda, our teacher, our friend, our founder, lived at Mount Washington, Yogananda's headquarters in the last years of Yogananda's life. He said it was like a hotel. People checking in, people checking out. The guru wasn't good enough for him. Even if you recognize, will you follow? I mean, think back. Jesus Christ walked up to Matthew the tax collector. I played Matthew in a passion play once when I was in seminary, so I'm sticking with that guy, have all my life. Anyway, he goes up to this guy who's in his tax booth or whatever they do, you know, extorting from poor people their money. And he looks at him and he says, "Come, follow me." The guy walks out of the booth. Could you do that? I doubt it. I'm not sure I could. That's the power. That's the power to liberate us from the confines, from the prison of this ego. It takes that kind of power. It takes the power that has created the universe, because that's where it takes you, into universal consciousness. And so we celebrate and honor the descent from above of God into human form. And I'll close with the thought that for us in this age, something that's vitally important, admittedly maybe just a little bit of the mind, but as you get it in the heart, it means a lot more, which is unlike East and West, India and of course the Christians, they tend to see their avatars, their saviors, their redeemers, as not just heaven sent, but only heaven sent. Whereas Yogananda clarified for us. You know, when Jesus came up to John the Baptist, and John the Baptist has said, "I'm not worthy even to unlace your sandals," or whatever they wore. Jesus said, "Let it be so, to fulfill righteousness." Why? Yogananda said that John the Baptist had been his guru. He was honoring the gift of the guru to his own evolution as Jesus Christ. And so Yogananda explained that these great avatars, saviors, whatever you want to call them, are no different than you and I. They aren't divine puppets. I mean, what would a divine puppet do nailed on a cross? It's just it's a put-up job. No, they are souls like you and I who have done the work, have walked the path, walked their talk, and achieved that goal with divine grace. And this, why else would as many as received him become the sons of God? How else could it be? We are made in that image. So we honor then that avatara, that descent from spirit of those who are way showers, who have walked the path and can show us, and who, when they reincarnate, they have to go through their, you know, and a human body has its limitations. They aren't all walking around home, you know, in cosmic consciousness. They accept the limitations. There are times when the spirit moves them, yes, and they can maybe see somebody, you know, whatever they may see, a past life or a future life or something. But Swami Kriyananda asked Yogananda, well, he asked him more or less, are you always in like cosmic consciousness? He said, no. The sacrifice the masters make, as we say every Sunday in the Festival of Life, is to accept the limitations. Not from bondage like you and I who have to work things out, but to accept the limitations of the human form. And from time to time, that connection, it's always there. They never lose the sense of their inner freedom, is what Yogananda actually said. But for all that, they still have a job to do and a role to play. And so do you and I. Jai Guru. We are made in that image. So we honor them, that avatara, that descent from spirit, of those who are way showers, who have walked the path